Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and we are continuing the trend today of incredible young entrepreneurs doing really cool things. Today's entrepreneur is one that I've been so excited to interview because not only does she exude so much passion about what she does with her work, but I'm going to extrapolate that out even bigger. She exudes so much joy about not only her work, but also her greater industry and the direction she's going in and all the people that she gets to serve. Let me tell you all about today's guest. Her name is Gemma Cullen. At only 19 years old, Gemma established her own design enterprise, Form and Function, while pursuing her bachelor's degree in interior design and holding a position as the president of ASID, which is the American Society of Interior Designers at Appalachian State University. Gemma's passion for design has been ingrained in her since childhood. Upon her graduation in 2025, she intends to maintain her business with the realm of high-end residential projects while also studying for her NCIDQ certification, which she'll shed more light on that for us today, which will authorize her to stamp her own construction documents as an accredited interior designer. Not only is this an amazing entrepreneur who's making moves today, but she's already lining up incredible projects now and long into the future for all the impact that she wants to have, not only with her clients, but also the industry at large. We're going to talk about so much of that stuff. So I'm excited about this one. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Gemma Cullen. All right, Gemma, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited to get to talk to you today.
Heck yes, we love having young entrepreneurs here on the show because you are making moves and making changes both now and into the future. But first things first, take us beyond the bio. Who's Gemma? You've had such a young start. How'd you start doing all this stuff?
Honestly, traditionally, right after I graduated high school, I started kind of doing little projects on the side, even just for friends, family friends, redoing children's rooms, or even in our own house, my parents' house. We actually did a huge renovation on a kitchen, and I was the one to kind of say, this kitchen doesn't make sense in this part of the house, but what if we moved it all the way over here to where it serves more function? So I've always just been so passionate about it. And then I moved to college. And oddly enough, Facebook was my way to kind of get into having my own business, as two sisters from Los Angeles were looking specifically for a student interior design student to work on their Airbnbs here in Boone, North Carolina, which is the college town that I live in. And it kind of just went off from there. I realized I loved being my own boss. So thank you, Facebook, for getting me all the opportunity.
Yes, I love that. Honestly, that's so cool. And that's the thing I love about all of our young entrepreneurial starts is that it's happenstance. There's just different circumstances that for one reason or another, Gemma, it spoke to us. And I remember when I was 19 and I started my first business, obviously you also started at 19. And I think that's so incredible. What was it though? Because it does require, when I think back to my college experience, I missed parties, I missed social gatherings. But I don't even consider it missing it for even 1 second. I loved what I did. Gemma, you are choosing to be a young hustler. What is it behind that mentality?
Truly, I think all of it has just stemmed from passion. That's really all that I can say. Your passion really fuels your dreams, and then it fuels that motivation that you have to reach those dreams. And one thing that I find to just be so important about this is to not let your age or your education limit you from starting and doing something early on in life. Because I've always wanted to own my own interior design firm, but I was like, do I need to wait until, I graduate, maybe work for another firm for a while? And then one day the switch kind of flipped on me and I was like, why don't I do it now? I'm already working on these projects. I'm already building these connections. Let's just jump straight into it. I'm young. If it fails, it fails. I have a whole rest of my life to live.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to publicly call this out, Gemma. It's fun having this conversation with you because you get it in so many ways. And part of what I refer to when I say you get it is I remember back when I was in school, so many of my classmates, so I went to business school, so all of them wanted to work in Wall Street. They wanted to work at these huge Fortune 500 companies. It just seemed to me, something didn't settle right, that they were waiting for someone else's permission, that we had to interview for jobs and be chosen by someone else. And Gemma, for one reason or another, you and I chose ourselves. I would love to hear your mindset behind that, because even just hearing the way you frame potential failure, it doesn't bother you. You don't view that as a potential obstacle. Talk to us about that mindset.
Yeah, so I think mindset is really everything. And then also having the confidence to do something when nobody else is. It really, again, comes from that passion and keeping your mind set on the end goal. You know, you might have an image of something that you want to reach, and you're going to do whatever it takes to get there. You know, if I happen to fail, I'm going to find a way out of it. And I know that I will, because there's been, you know, some challenges in the past and I've overcome them on the other side. And so I think it's really important to keep your mindset, you know, equal with your confidence, and with those two and motivation, you know, you'll really have it set up for yourself where you have enough trust in your gut to reach those goals that you have.
Yeah, really well said. And something that I remember at that time period in my entrepreneurial journey is I realized, well, if I succeed, then incredible things will happen. If I fail, I still get to apply for jobs like everybody else. So my worst case scenario is the same as their best case scenario. So you're not really losing anything. And I love that. But so many of your answers, even this early on in our conversation, it keeps coming back to passion. And Gemma, I'm going to publicly praise you. In doing my research ahead of our episode here today, I see that you're not just passionate about your business. You are passionate about your industry as a whole. You go to events all over the world. You are always singing the praises of vendors that you've had the opportunity to work with, other people in your space. Talk to us about that passion. Where does it come from, and how have you brought that into life, not just through your work, but how active you are in your industry?
Yeah, honestly, I think I've always been the type to really network and want to find people with the same interests that I do and just share that and connect. And ASID, it's a national kind of industry that we all come together, and it's the American Society of Interior Designers. And we all come together, we network. It's all interior designers. We learn about different vendors, different manufacturers, you know, furniture, countertops, appliances, everything like that. And we have meetings, continuing education units that we'll take together. And something about having a leadership position in that, even just at my school at Appalachian State University, it's just been so important to me. And I've always kind of loved to be in a leadership role. I'm very type A. I like to be in control. So I think that's really stemmed, you know, into my role in ASID. And then eventually I do want to be on the state board, and I'll be running to be the student representative to the Carolinas board this fall. So I'm hoping to achieve that and just raise awareness even for students getting involved early, because half of this industry is networking, and it's who you know at the end of the day. That's how you'll get these clients. That's how you'll get the contractors that you want. And it's really just like a snowball effect. You know, who you meet can get you places.
Yeah, for sure. Really good advice. And I'm also going to call out for listeners this early on in our conversation today about self-awareness. Gemma, it's so clear in getting to interact with you here today that you talk about being type A. You're aware of that, but you also know what to do with it, which I think is important for all of us as entrepreneurs when we're facing challenges, when we're in the good times, but also looking towards the future, when we're growing our teams, when we're hiring people, having self-awareness to complement the things that we're good at and also the things that we're not so great at. So I love that self-awareness is already coming up here in today's conversation. And I want to expand on that, because let's talk about the elephant in the room. I certainly felt this when I was 19, when I started, and I know that you for sure feel it when you walk into these events, is you're probably the youngest one in so many rooms that you're in. It can be a blessing and a curse in so many different ways of however we want to take it. Talk to us about how you address that, because we all have them. I want to add this disclaimer before you share your insights here, is that listeners, maybe you're not 20 like Gemma is. Maybe you are 45. Maybe you're 75. In one way or another, we all have the things that we feel, oh, are people going to look at me because I'm too young or too old, or because I'm too this or too that? Gemma, walk us through, how do you navigate those waters?
Yeah, so navigating those waters, it is a hard thing, but again, just coming in with that confidence and also kind of approaching it as, hi, my name is Gemma Cullen. I have my own business. I know I'm young, but kind of taking something that you can learn from maybe that professional, and it creates that connection and it kind of gives them the opportunity to see you as somebody that they can kind of mentor, even though you have your own business and you do have these experiences at such a young age. They can often doubt you and be like, oh, it must not be, that serious of a thing. But once you kind of give them that respect to almost teach you something, then they kind of can get, on your level of being able to talk to you and respect you at your age.
Yeah, I love that perspective, especially because so many entrepreneurs, we hear it from listeners all the time. Of course, imposter syndrome. It's a real thing. We all face it. It doesn't go away. I'm 16 years into this journey. There are times where we all have that thought of, who am I to be doing this? And Gemma, when I look on your website, which we're going to talk about your website at the end of today's episode,
Yeah.
I see not only the way that you show up in your brand, but I see front and center the actual incredible work that you do, your amazing projects, the beautiful projects that you've brought to life in the world. I mean, especially the cozy cabin Airbnb. I'm a sucker. As a New Englander, I'm a sucker for a good cabin. And so talk to us about that. Was there imposter syndrome when you landed your first few projects of saying, oh my gosh, I have to deliver on this now? What does that look like? Take us back to those first few projects.
Yeah, I mean, those first few projects, I was like, okay, I got this. So how am I going to make this happen? Am I going to get deliveries on time? What if there's a tiff with the contractor? What do I do about that? There's so many different things that you have to worry about as a designer and doing something for the first time. But it's really just, I hate to say, like, it's all up to fate, but at some point, you just have to know that you can do it within yourself and that everything will be okay. And you'll be able to deliver as long as you have the motivation. And then you also have the support around you. Like, my parents have always just been so supportive. I mean, my dad, he immigrated here from England and he started his own car business. So I kind of grew up around it. And he always said, like, you will make it happen as long as you believe in yourself.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I didn't introduce this into the conversation, but you did. So I'm totally going to piggyback off of it. I associate so much of my mindset as an entrepreneur and as a person in life to the fact that I come from an immigrant family. So hearing you say that you share the same sort of background really resonates with me. Where I want to take that is, for me, my mom coming from Albania, which is not a developed Western country. I mean, she grew up in the mountains without electricity or running water, which is unfathomable to me. I can't imagine growing up that way. But for me, she always reiterated to me, and still to this day she does, of saying anything is possible. And speaking to your point there, I always have had the belief, whether it's in sports, playing soccer growing up, or in business, of I can and will rise to this occasion. I'll always figure things out. May not be pretty all the time, but I will always figure something out to get me through that. Talk to us about your approach to that, because you mentioned the delivery of a project. You had to figure a lot of things out, Gemma. That's just not interior design. That's keeping a client happy, keeping them informed in every step of the way, collaborating with them throughout that. What does that delivery process look like for you? And it's a two-part question at first, and then how has it evolved in your growth as an entrepreneur?
Yes. So delivery, I mean, going back to my dad, even when I was in high school, he was like, okay, it's time for you to get a job. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. And I really just hit the ground running. I think I got my work ethic from him. And then in projects, just delivering that final piece. There's so many elements. I mean, you have clients texting you all the time, calling you all the time. You have to completely organize deliveries. And, I've had a couple clients that are out of state. And so you're having to almost find people to sign for those deliveries, and make sure that somebody's at the house to sign for it and schedule them accordingly, also with the contractor who's going to install the items. So it's definitely managing a lot of people. And so that's just a really, really important way to make sure that the delivery of the project is just very seamless.
Yeah, which guests know that part of what we ask our listeners know that we ask our guests, what's your zone of genius? And I'm going to read it here because I absolutely love the way you articulated it, Gemma. You said, I believe my zone of genius lies in my capacity to deeply empathize with my clients, viewing a home as a complete narrative and canvas to cultivate a seamless sense of luxury. Gemma, that sounds like a polished response from someone who's been doing this for 20 years. Obviously, it is rooted in your passion, the fact that you have loved this for so many years already, but that can't be something that immediately came overnight. That's something that comes from you being in business and experiencing people. Obviously, people are at the root of it. We're talking about interior design, but it's interior design for the form and function of people who are going to enjoy those spaces. So talk to us about those interactions, because I'm guessing you are naturally a little bit extroverted. And so that probably helps. But for people who are saying, well, Gemma, it's not so easy for me to interact with people, what are some of those strategies and techniques that you use to ensure that deeply empathetic approach with clients?
Yeah, I mean, with clients, it really starts with your first phone call with them and creating that first relationship. And something that I like to do to be able to empathize with them is I actually ask my clients to walk through the space or the house that we're going to be working on and give me like a day in their life of how they go throughout their space. And then also point out some items like, oh, we have this heirloom bookcase that I really want to keep because, you know, my grandmother got it from this yard sale years ago, or it was hand carved by a relative. Stuff like that is so important. And when a client is vulnerable with you, it creates some sort of connection to where you're on the same page, and they'll then in turn trust you with their home. But really taking that walkthrough with a client is so important, because even in kitchen design, first you have to ask, okay, who's the cook in the family? Okay, I need to go talk to whoever cooks in the family, and they need to walk me through their favorite recipes, what they gravitate towards in the kitchen. You know, do you like gas? Do you like electric? You have to really get to the root of who's using that space, how they're using it, what they want to feel in that space. Do they want to go into their library and feel, you know, very relaxed, or do they want to have like this great outdoor space with a lot of energy where they like to have family get-togethers? You really truly have to empathize with your client, and that's where design stems from. I mean, you can walk into a home and feel very unwelcomed, and that's when you ask your question, why do I feel so unwelcomed? What is off in this space?
Yeah, looking for those patterns. It's so important, not only in design, but in business and especially in life. So I love the fact that you can draw on those analogies that we all experience. And listeners, I think the key thing about hearing the way Gemma thinks about interior design is the question that I ask myself is, how can I borrow these principles and apply it to my own industries? It's something that we can all lean on. And along those lines, Gemma, I think it's fascinating how much you already understand, even this young in your entrepreneurial journey, how much of an emphasis it is on the clients. And so even when I look at, you know, your goals are much bigger than what you're doing today. Your goals are on construction documents and exteriors and so much that you're going to be doing in the future. But I would imagine the consistent thing throughout all of that is going to be those clients. Talk to us about how that has changed over time as far as you finding clients, you nurturing those clients, because sales don't happen overnight. This is a process. It's surely been one for you. So give us some insights there.
Yeah, I mean, so nurturing clients, that's something that's so, so important. I mean, one of my most recent, she is a real estate agent who moved up here from Tampa, has a house in Boone, had me renovate it. And then she had one of her close friends move up here as well. And I got a referral, and now I'm working on their 7,000 square foot home. And she's also another real estate agent, and her husband is actually a contractor. So I've really gotten to work so closely with them, and I've gotten to learn a lot from them as well. And so it just shows that whenever you give that attention and that love to a client and they trust you, they will give you those referrals then to their friends, and they're great friends. I mean, I've just learned so much from these amazing clients in my life. I'm not only giving them services, but I feel as though I'm learning from them as well at my young age.
Yeah, Gemma, gosh, 7,000 square feet, interior designing. I have no idea how you even start to go about that. Obviously, you're the expert in that domain, but it does make me want to ask you, how do you stay on top of trends? Or is that something that you go about in your industry? Because I imagine, and just as someone who has seen, different relatives or friends or people that I see their houses, design changes over time. And there's all different aesthetics that people prefer. You talked about networking earlier on in our session today. How much of that is staying on top of trends or looking at where the market is going? How do you tap into the pulse of your industry?
Yeah, tapping into the pulse of the industry. I mean, I feel like a lot of, the furniture companies and then even, Arc Digest, they're the ones letting out those trends. When you have a new piece of furniture come out or a new type of countertop come out, you ask yourself, okay, is this a trend, like a fad type of thing, or is it very timeless? I personally go for more timeless, but then I also, again, back to empathizing with the client, what do they want in their home? Like I've done more modern homes, I've done more traditional homes, like the one I'm working on right now, the 7,000 square foot one. It's more traditional, leaning a little bit transitional. But I feel like trends are really set by those manufacturers that are giving us the resources to use in our business.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. And I even extrapolate that into my own industries where I think about all the different software tools that we're all using. Those present opportunities for us to leverage them in our projects, whether it's our internal operations or operations with clients. And so in your case, looking at the manufacturers, they're giving you things that you can either play with or not play with, but they're all opportunities for you to integrate them. But obviously we all, as business owners, as innovative thinkers, we have the opportunities to reject or accept these different things and integrate them or not. So I love hearing your perspective there. I want to ask you about this because you not only are amazing at interior design, but you're one of us. You're a fellow entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And I want to ask you about sales because it's something that I remember when I was 19 starting my first business. It was for sure the area that I was most uncomfortable with. I was very comfortable with the subject matter, not so comfortable with sales. What's that process been like for you?
Yeah, so sales and interior design, I mean, that's a lot of where you get your income from, to be completely transparent. I mean, every designer, you'll get trade discounts at all these manufacturers, and you have to really search the market. Is Wayfair selling this? Is another furniture brand selling this for less than what I would be selling it for to my client? Because at the end of the day, clients are trying to also get the cheapest price. So a lot of it is researching, making sure that you're still competitive, but then also making sure that you're getting that markup while being affordable for your client. So that's definitely something that is a little bit harder for me. And then also even bookkeeping, the accounting side of everything, keeping up with that. I mean, at the end of the day, you really just want to design, but then you have this whole entire business that's all encompassing that you do need to keep up with and take control of. So your brain is kind of always on.
Yeah, well then I want to go deeper there with you, Gemma, because you are not just a practitioner. You also are maintaining. You use bookkeeping as the example. There's so many more responsibilities that we don't just get to be practitioners, of course, until we get to a certain point and we get to hire different facets out. Are you as passionate about the business side as you are about the interior design part? And what have been some of the surprising things in there for you?
Yeah, honestly, I love the business part, but it's definitely one of those things that I have to tell myself, okay, let's sit down, let's set an alarm, let's do some bookkeeping while we're here. But then I'm always kind of in my seat, getting kind of anxious. I'm like, can I just go design? Or I have this project to work on. There's definitely things that I would rather be working on than, the back of house things that people don't see and aren't really aware of. And then on top of school, it's like, okay, I have this school project that's kind of like a fantasy project. And then I have these real projects, but they both have real deadlines. So that's also something that I've definitely had to balance as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't even think to ask you about the school side of things, but thinking back about my college days of managing both classes and a growing business, classes sometimes went off the wayside, Gemma. So I'd love to hear your perspective. How are you balancing the two?
Yeah, I mean, it is a lot of hard work. Our program at Appalachian State University, it's very rigorous. One of our most important classes, it's our studio class, and that's when you have your largest projects. In the fall semester, I did like over 140,000 square foot hotel. And I was in the studio at least 12 to 14 hours a day, in there till 3 a.m. And I'm not a procrastinator. It was that big of a project. And it was also a partner project. And then I had to go home or wake up early in the morning, work on client stuff, or while you're working on a project, you're having a client call you, you're like, okay, give me a second. Let me go out in the hallway and take this. So that was definitely a very tough semester where I can't say that I had balance in my personal life, but I was able to balance the business and coursework.
Yeah, and that's what seasons are for. I think, quite frankly, we all just need to admit is that it's not about always having all the things in balance. It's about recognizing this season calls for this balance ratio, maybe that balance ratio is completely out of balance to others, but it is using and leveraging those seasons to our advantages to recognize what season we're in our lives and in our businesses, and setting ourselves up for success that way, which for you, you're not just managing the client phone calls and the course load, but also you're building a client roster, you're building a brand. And I want to go there with you because I love the way that you personally show up in your brand, but also how your brand has an identity in and of itself. It's something that came way later to me in my entrepreneurial journey. I found it really difficult to find that balance. Talk to me about form and function, because obviously it's something you've invested time and intention into, to how that shows up, from your colors to your fonts. And I know aesthetics are kind of your thing. You've got a little bit of expertise there. So talk to us about that brand development that you've done.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the first brand that I made for myself, it was called Gem Interiors, which I look back at and I just laugh because it's like a play on my name, but then you're like, oh, you find a gem like in a house type thing. And it's just seeing it grow into form and function, which I loved the words form and function, because without form and function in a space, you don't have a home. You don't have, a functional area to work within. And so that was something that I really just loved. And I'm also very much so like a neutral person with how I dress. So it also identifies with the way that I have my brand. I wanted it to have a blank canvas. I didn't want it to have a certain aesthetic because I wanted it to be able to grow into something else for my clients as more of a blank canvas, the black and white and kind of creamy tone. We can add to that on every project, no matter the aesthetic, we can reach our needs for our clients.
Yeah, I really like hearing that. And you say, you don't want it to have its own identity for your clients, but that does. I mean, it's just like when we look at Apple, for example, they have very minimalist branding, but it speaks for itself. Mm-hmm. And to your point, we get to fill in the gaps. Apple represents for all of us something different. For me, it just plain works. I never have to worry about my technology because everything in the Apple ecosystem works. So it does allow that opportunity in that room for it to speak to different people in different ways. So I really love that perspective and the intentionality behind it, and also finally how it's a reflection of yourself. So huge kudos to you on that. I want to look forward with you because I think it's so cool. It's right there in your bio how much you're looking forward to a certification that you're working towards and all different things. What does that time horizon look like for you? Because obviously you're focused on graduation, you're focused on growing your business. What does the future look like in the mind of Gemma?
Yes. So the future, that is a scary thing, but it's also a very exciting thing. So I will be pursuing my NCIDQ, which is the National Council for Interior Design qualification. It's currently a certification that's being seen as recognizable throughout the United States. It's actual legislation being passed for interior designers to be registered in states, because as of right now, any interior decorator can call themselves a designer, even though we're doing completely different work. Designers, we can move walls, we can make floor plans. Whenever you kind of see architects doing that, when they're more trained to see the outside of a home, we are really trained to see the inside. I mean, codes and everything. And that's what the NCIDQ, you study these code books like crazy. I kind of say it's like the bar of law school, but for interior design. And I'm just really excited to take these tests. There's one that I can take right after I graduate. And then I have about, I think, 4 to 5 years to complete all of them. but I'm going to try to do it as soon as possible to get that certification under my belt. So I'm able to draw up all these documents to hand off to contractors and have them really put them to the test.
Yeah, that is very cool. And I also just want to point out logistically is that you do work with clients all across the country, which I think is really cool. A lot of people probably think about interior design and it's limited to their local geographic area. Talk to us about the logistics of that and how you're serving people, not just close to you, but even far away.
Yeah, I mean, communication is key. You always have to have your phone on. And a lot of it is, the virtual design. And I'm going to be launching virtual design on my website in the next couple of weeks because I do want to reach more clients around the country. But also even just differences in time, having clients that are from LA, they're 3 hours behind. And so I have to be on everything, before a certain time of day to send out to them, or even with deliveries. And with, a project in Tennessee or Detroit, Michigan that I've done before, you really have to be on top of it. But it's so exciting to be able to see your work in different states.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I remember when I started my soccer blog when I was still in school, I used to love the Google Analytics screen that showed where all of our web traffic was coming from, because that's where you see the global impact that you're making. And for you designing these spaces, I'm looking at one of the Airbnbs that you designed right now. Like, that's a physical space that people get to fly in from all over the world and enjoy something that you have created. So that sort of impact is very cool. And Gemma, I knew we'd be short on time here today, but I want to squeeze in two final questions with you because one,
of course,
we have you here and you're a brilliant interior designer. So we might as well ask about interior design because a lot of entrepreneurs work from home. Obviously, there's a big work from home revolution post-COVID. Since 2020, more and more people are doing that. What can we do from a practicality perspective to make our spaces more set up, not only for coziness, but also productivity?
Yeah, so productivity at home, I think, is really important. And honestly, having your desk near a window, natural light really fuels the soul. So I would definitely recommend having your desk near some sort of light, and then also having a very organized desk that works for you, having all, your systems in place. And then also just being able to look outside for a little bit of a brain break and a screen break. I mean, we're on screens, 25/8, it's 2024. So it's really important to have that natural light, I would say, in your workspace, and also just having that functionality for sure.
Yes, listeners, I'm a big believer. How you do anything is how you do everything. If your desk is an absolute disaster, chances are your business is probably following suit. So Gemma, I love that call to action from you to all of our listeners worldwide. And the last question, I always love asking guests this because not only do you get to pull on all of your expert knowledge with regards to interior design and all the great things that you do there, but also as a fellow entrepreneur, I think it's so cool to hear your advice. So with all of the things in mind that we talked about today, what's the one takeaway, the one thing that you hope every listener, no matter where they are in their entrepreneurial journey, that they walk away from today's episode with?
I would just love to say, stop waiting and start doing. Never think that you're too young or you're uneducated to do something. When you have that little voice in your head saying, oh, I just want to do this, you already know how to do it. It's just taking that step forward to do so.
Yes, amen to that. That is such a good piece of advice. It's a really important piece of advice for every single one of us. And it's not advice that we just get to do just once. It's something that we always have to remind ourselves for. So Gemma, I know that listeners are going to be super keen to see your work in action, especially I've been tooting the horn of those 2-cabin Airbnbs. They're right front and center on your website. And I know there's so much other good stuff there. So drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yes, so you can see a lot of my up-to-date things on our Instagram. Our handle is at formandfunction_CO, and we would love to see you on there. We do stories all the time, so you can kind of see the behind the scenes of everything. And then our Facebook is also the same, and then our website is just formandfunctionco.com. So we would love to just see you guys kind of come in, explore with us, contact us.
Yes, listeners, you already know the drill. We are making it as easy as possible for you all to find those links down below in the show notes, wherever it is that you're tuning into today's episode. You'll find the link to formandfunctionco.com. That's down below in the show notes, as well as a link to all of Gemma's socials, including her personal LinkedIn. So if you just want to reach out to her and continue the conversation or thank her for sharing so transparently her experience, her perspective, all of the lessons that she's picked up along the way, then feel free to reach out to her there. So Gemma, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much, Brian. It was great.